It seems like no matter what you do, things keep piling up on your plate and you can't seem to get ahead. I want to share with you the things that have worked for me to help me stay on top of my to-do list. These are all sorts of time-saving little tricks and hacks that have worked wonders. Some of these you may have heard before, but some of them I bet you haven't, like anti-batching. All that plus more in this video. Let's go. Hi guys, it's Laura and I help you live a simpler, happier, more spacious life. You want to actually enjoy the life that you have and enjoy your hobbies without feeling that you are beholden to different obligations and responsibilities. Also, sorry if you can hear all my hard drives going crazy in the background here, but one of them crashed recently. Thankfully I had a backup, but it is currently restoring everything and I daren't touch it. So we're just going to leave that run. The first thing on this list, it is so foundational. In fact, it's so foundational that it's going to sound basic, but it is incredibly important. This revolutionized the game for me, and that is planning your days and even your week in advance. Here's why it's important. It helps you get an overview of your entire week, and I'm going to share how is the best way to plan out your week to fit in all of your priorities and have the maximum amount of you time possible. Your weekly plan is your framework for how everything else is going to work. So I said we were going to talk about the best way to do that, and it starts with removing anything that is completely unnecessary, anything unwanted from your list. So how does this fit into your weekly plan? Well, the very first thing you're going to do is to slot in the things that absolutely have to get done, no matter what. I am talking absolute essentials. Be really, really strict here. You also want to slot in the things that you really, really want to make time for, your hobbies, your passions, your desires, the things that light you up or the things that recharge you. Time is a limited resource. Once you spend it, you don't get it back. There are no refunds on time. You have to make sure that your time is being spent on the most important things first, and that everything else is just set aside. Next, you want to slot in everything else, and this is when it comes time to prioritize. You need to start listing them in order of importance and or urgency. Now remember, just because something is urgent does not necessarily mean that you have to do it. A question that I sent out in a recent newsletter was, who is this important to? Like, if somebody tells you that I need you to call me back by the end of the day, is that really important to you, or is it important to them? Who benefits most from you getting this done? And then on the flip side, what are the consequences for you of not getting it done? Are there any, or are there ones that you're willing to live with? So you have your absolutely have to's, and then you have your next priorities. And what I will say here, a great tip, something that has worked really well for me when I stick to it, which admittedly is not always, but I do feel the benefit when I do stick to it, and I definitely feel the downside when I don't. That is to front load your weeks and your days. Here's why. Life. We all know that the best laid plans completely unravel. Okay, things will crop up unexpectedly, random things will happen, and before you know it, the day completely gets away from you. If you are leaving your most important things to the end of the day, chances are you may run out of time before you get to them. That's not just unexpected things. Like, let's face it, as the days and weeks go on, we run out of energy, we run out of steam, we run out of motivation. You don't want to waste your best hours on the things that really do not matter. And don't forget those breaks, because they are just as important as all of the other work. The other work won't get done unless you have the energy to do it. Now, I know I said I was going to talk about anti-batching, but I do first want to give honorable shout out to batching, because it can be helpful in certain circumstances and in maybe different ways than you have heard about before. The first comes down to batching according to location. When you're home, you're doing certain tasks. When you're in the office, you're doing certain tasks. When you are out and about, you're doing certain tasks. When you are in front of your computer, you're doing certain tasks. So depending on the location, the environment that you're in, those are the tasks that you are going to batch together, so that when you're in that location, in that environment, in those surroundings, you can get as much done as possible while you're there. But there is another way as well, and that is batching by the kind of tools or items that are required to do a certain task. Let me give you an example. So right now I have my camera out, I have my lights set up, I am all ready to go, ready to film, my hair is looking reasonably okay. I can batch record lots of video. Well, not lots because I would run out of energy, but it's the second one I'm recording today. Not only that though, I can obviously get thumbnails for all of the videos, but I can also take photographs for Instagram, for social media, for random different things because I have my lights already set up and my camera is all ready to go, my batteries are all charged, etc. Because look, let's face it, almost half the time of any task can be spent setting things up. One thing I hate with a fiery passion is you read a recipe, it says, you know, like 10 minutes prep, and you're thinking, oh great, that's nice, quick and easy. Yeah, except it takes you 30 minutes to get all of the ingredients together and have them all chopped and measured out and everything. Oh no. Then on the flip side, like at the end of the task, a lot of time is spent clearing things away, tidying up afterwards. So instead of doing that multiple times throughout the week, try and make sure that you're only doing it the once. This is something I've talked about before, and I honestly do not think that it gets the attention that it deserves. Alternating your energy types. So there are some tasks that are going to take up a huge amount of mental energy, things like studying, researching, etc. On the flip side, there are some tasks that are going to take up a huge amount of physical energy. And then obviously there are going to be tasks that are going to be a mix of the two, but generally one will require more of one type of energy. Here's why this is important. Have you ever been exhausted? You have gone to bed, you've thought, I need to sleep for a week, and then you lie there for hours staring at the ceiling. It's possible that it's because one of your energy batteries is drained, but the other one still good to go. So while you may be physically exhausted from running around all day, your brain is still very much active. Or maybe you've been studying all day, you just like your brain needs to switch off, but you've been sitting in a chair all day, so your body is kind of restless and needs to move around. Generally with any given task, you are going to be draining one of those batteries, either your brain battery or your body battery, a little faster than the other. So look at your tasks, figure out what type of energy it is draining, and then instead of batching it with another mentally exhausting task, for example, you switch and you alternate so that your brain gets a chance to recharge and refuel while your body takes over some of the work. It's like having a backup battery, you know, a battery in reserve, so that when one battery is completely drained, you can recharge that and work off of your other battery. It is anti-batching. It's making sure that you're not doing too much of a similar task so that you have time to recuperate and rejuvenate. Another thing that's kind of similar to batching is multiplying. Here is the kind of subtle difference between them. Whereas batching is doing lots of similar tasks together, multiplying is doing the same task and just doing more of it. A really good example of this is meal prepping, you know, cooking multiple meals all at once, chopping vegetables, you know, that you're chopping all of your vegetables or washing all of your fruits while you are in the flow of doing that one thing. Like I said before, the bulk of a task can be the setup and the cleanup. So not only are you saving yourself all of that time for the rest of the week, but you're also giving yourself a better chance of getting into the flow state. You know, like once you've been doing something for a certain amount of time, you kind of go on autopilot. You do it without thinking, you just get in the zone and you can churn it out. It's why factory lines are so effective, because it's much quicker for one person to do the same task over and over again rather than for them to do one task and then move on to another task and then another task. So while you've got all of your stuff out, when you're ready to go, plow through as much as you can with the energy levels that you have and get yourself into that state where you are effortlessly getting the work done. Now maybe you're thinking about multitasking, because surely it's quicker to do two things at once, and the answer is maybe. You were expecting me to say no there, weren't you? For me, I found that there is a right way to multitask and there is a wrong way to multitask. So there are active tasks, the ones that you need to be actively involved and engaged in, and then there are passive tasks, the ones that you can kind of sit back and go on autopilot, like we talked about with the multiplying of tasks. And that could be something like wiping down a surface. It could be rewatching a favorite TV show, something that doesn't really require a huge amount of mental energy. The trick then to the right way to multitask that I have found is to pair a passive task with either another passive task or with an active task. Now, there is a caveat. You have to make sure that both tasks are things that you actually want to do or have to do. There's no point ticking 2 things off of your list if one or both of those things don't really need to be done at all. They should have been gotten rid of like way back in step 1 of this. So look at all the things you have to do for the coming week, mark out your active tasks, mark out your passive tasks, and see which of those you could fit together nicely. Now, maybe you assume that this next one won't work for you, but I want you to hear me out because there are different ways of doing it that maybe you haven't considered before. I am referring to delegating. And when we think about delegation, we think about bosses delegating to employees, but there are different ways that you can do it. And one of them is just by getting your family or asking your friends to help out with something, but also there are services that you can employ to help you with certain things, like food delivery services. These do not have to be permanent commitments. You could just get someone in to do a once-off clean or whatever you need, just to take some of that pressure off of you. And maybe you're thinking, that's great, but I can't afford that. There are plenty of other ways that you can delegate responsibilities or delegate some tasks without it costing you anything. So like I mentioned, getting a family member to help out or a friend. Sometimes this is as simple, literally as simple as just asking your spouse or your kid to pick up their socks or to help you fold some laundry or to do a grocery shop for you. I mean, there are so many different ways that you can implement this, but you could also barter in some way. So maybe you organize with your neighbor that this week you will pick your kid and their kid up from school and bring them home, and then the next week they will return the favor, and that will free up some extra time for you if next week is particularly busy for you. And it's not just other people and services, but there are appliances and gadgets that have some form of automation built into them. It's like putting your washing machine on a delay function so that the clothes are washed and ready to go into the dryer in the morning, or setting your coffee machine on a timer so that it is brewing while you are waking up. Look at things on your list and ask yourself, is there someone who could do this for me, either just as a favor or as, you know, a paid job that they would do, or is there a service that I could use that would do this? And like I said, it does not have to be this permanent commitment. It could just be a once off. Now, if you're a fellow perfectionist, you might recoil at the thought of this next one, but I have learned over the years that it can be very helpful. It's cutting corners. I know, hear me out on this, but there are certain things that do not have to be done to a very exacting standard. Focus your attention on the things that really do mean a lot to you, to have them done properly, and then let it go with a lot of the rest of them. Let me give you some examples. When you are vacuuming, you don't have to vacuum into every nook and cranny every time you're vacuuming. You could, during the week, just focus on the high traffic areas, and then on the weekends, get into the corners. Same with dusting. You don't have to dust every single thing in your home each time you're dusting. You can focus on the things that are getting the most use or are in the most common areas. Or if you're like me, who absolutely hates dusting, you could just not do it nearly as often as you probably should. But a great way that I have implemented this is by not separating all of my clothes in the laundry. Everything just goes in together, as long as I know that it is reasonably color fast, and all of my clothes I've had for a long time generally, so I know they're fine. They all go in together. Look, in an ideal world, would I be separating out all of the colors? Would I be separating things out according to like what temperature they needed to be washed at? Would I be separating them out according to their weight? Because apparently you're supposed to wash like heavy clothes like jeans and stuff separately. Yeah, in an ideal world with like infinite time, I would do that, and infinite patience. But I don't. I just throw them all in together. It is every item of clothing for itself. If it makes it out of the wash, which 99.9% of the time it does, that is great. And if it doesn't, then that's probably not something that I wanted to devote special care and attention to. Now, if it is a new item of clothing, then yes, I might wash it separately for the first few times until I know that it is color fast, or if it's something that is particularly precious to me, then yes, I might give it care and attention. But for everything else, like t-shirts, jeans. I'm not saying that I want to purposely destroy them or anything, but I'm also not going to be spending hours on the weekends sorting through all of my clothes. But for all of those routine, regular tasks, you don't have to do them to perfection every single time or ever, honestly. And I say this as a perfectionist. I try and channel my perfectionist ways into the things that really do matter to me. Other things I'm happy to perfectly ignore, like dusting. This next one will be invaluable to you if you ever find that certain things are falling through the cracks or you feel like you're not keeping on top of everything. This has revolutionized the game for me. That is doing a regular reset. Having a specific day where I do all of that routine maintenance upkeep stuff, because previously what I was finding is I was thinking, oh yes, I must get around to watering the plants or filing the paperwork or doing all of those types of tasks, and never really getting around to it until the situation had got completely out of hand or all the plants were dead. Now I have a set schedule for doing all of those. So I have my checklist written out of all of the things that I want to do. For example, on a Sunday, I do my weekly reset. That's when the laundry gets done. It's when the plants get watered. Honestly, game changer, not just in terms of keeping on top of things, but for freeing up all of that mental space, because otherwise, like I said, I would be thinking I really must get round to that over and over again in my head, and it would be stressing me out. As a bonus, something else that I sometimes do if I'm having a particularly busy week is to set aside a catch-up morning or afternoon, because like we discussed, sometimes the week just gets away from you and you won't be able to keep on top of the things that you had planned. So leaving a block of time that is specifically for catching up can be really, really important to help you catch your breath for a start, but to make sure that you are getting to the things that need to be taken care of. You know, when you get behind one day and then it rolls into another and you're just getting further and further behind, that is what catch-up time cuts out. Go grab your planner of choice. Might I recommend my digital planner if you're so inclined, and get to planning your perfect week with all of the tips that I have just discussed. If reset days are something that you're really interested in, I will link to my reset playlists. Until next time, go raibh míle maith agaibh, agus feici mé sibh se go luath. Slán!